in Europe. And that is the focus that we give. I can also add here that we are playing a key role in making the European research area work. And the European research area may be an abstract term, but it practically means that we are trying within Europe to have a free circulation of knowledge, but also of researchers. So everybody can, let's say, develop themselves and grow further into their careers. So the cost membership I was referring to, this gives you a map of our full members. We are indeed a European cooperation in science and technology, COST. But if there's one thing that you should retain from my presentation is that cost is a benefit. So I think that's the key message, and you'll explore a little bit throughout the program whether this is indeed the case also for you, but I'm quite confident. The color coding used here indicates that mostly in the north and western part of Europe, we have more research intense countries, and the countries indicated in green are, let's say, countries that have a bit less research intensive infrastructures, and that does not mean, and I say it in the same sentence, that there's no excellence. There are plenty of pockets of excellence, and our challenge is to connect all those pockets in a larger network that covers Europe and beyond. To get a little bit of an understanding what we are talking about, we have about 300 networks. We call them cost actions. And within those networks, they organize training schools, short-term scientific missions. So this is the short-term mobility, allowing you to go abroad, but not having to leave everything behind, including your family. And it also supports, I think, the brain's circulation. In total, there are about 50,000 active researchers in all those networks that we support. Each network has an average budget of about 155,000 euros, and the cost budget, let's say, for Horizon Europe, at least the first 3 years, amounts to 153 million. So how does it work? Well, first and foremost, it starts with a good idea. And here we have a main proposer. In this case, you see the Belgian flag. And the main proposer is trying to inspire, let's say, other partners to join a proposal as secondary proposers. So these flags, of course, are indicative. And on the basis of the proposals that are submitted, we go through a rigorous evaluation system that predominantly selects excellence. And then depending on the budget, we can fund an X number of actions. And the idea is that if you submit an excellent proposal, we help you to build a network around it. And that is what we do through our COST national coordinators. So in every country, we have a contact point, and they nominate people to join, let's say, the management committee of these actions. So you can see that actions can grow quite fast and can include all different kinds of participants that are interested in a particular topic. But there's even more possibilities to join in working groups. But this gives you, let's say, a bird's eye view on our unique selling proposition. So if you submit a good proposal or excellent proposal, because it's quite competitive, we help you to build a network around it. And the average number of participants in a network is a lot more than 200, actually. I think it's 220 nowadays. And high in the 20s, I think even around 30 number of countries involved. So that gives you an indication. This I already referred to, the 3 strategic priorities. I just wanted to offer you a little more depth in terms of excellence and inclusiveness. And that's what I would like to get across by means of those two maps. So on the left-hand side, you see a green color code. The darker the color green, the more participants in absolute numbers we have in cost. So there is quite obvious that, if you have a big country with a big community, there are larger numbers of participants participating. But on the right-hand side, you see in blue a color code that indicates the number of participants from a particular country relative to the size of the community. So to give you an idea, Cyprus there in the Eastern Mediterranean area, about 50% of the community participates in cost. Malta, 1/3. And so you see that in the Balkan area, but also the Baltics, that relative to the size of the community, you see quite a high level of participation. And that basically means that green or blue, everyone benefits. And I think that is the good news. So we are really about inclusive excellence in that respect. Cost is open for participation to other parts of the world. In first instance, you see the ring around Europe indicated in the color green. And I must immediately say that these countries can also benefit from funding, but that does not apply to Russia and Belarus and the occupied territories in Ukraine due to political reasons. And we have our funding coming from the European Commission. And so the European Commission gave us the guidance. And I think it has quite some merit from a political point of view, although scientists would always like to cooperate, of course, to exclude those communities from participation. The areas indicated in orange, that's the rest of the world, basically. Everyone is able to participate, but they have to bear their own expenditures. So our pockets are only so deep, 153 million for 3 years. So that is where the limit is. But in principle, we are open to the world. The second priority about this interdisciplinarity, this graph that is being built up as I speak, shows you the harvest of a particular open call. So all these proposals coming together, there are all different kinds of disciplines involved, and in proposals, they are often combined. There's a high level of interdisciplinarity, and here you see all the, let's say, the cross connections. That gives you a bit of an idea that we attract a high level of interdisciplinarity, but also at the end of the evaluation, that level, if you look at the ones that are selected, is still as high. So cost does not suppress interdisciplinarity. I think that is very important. And my colleagues will also explain a little bit more in detail about how that evaluation system in cost works and is favoring actually interdisciplinarity. On the third strategic priority, I would like to spend a few words by pointing out, let's say, the age categories. So it's very clear that in graphs, both graphs, left and right, you see the age categories represented. So on the right-hand side, you see the so-called inclusiveness target countries, so that are a little bit less research intense. They do very well on gender balance, for example. If you look at the relative size of female researchers, they do better than the other countries. On the other end, what you see on the left-hand side is that there is a clear, let's say, a high representation of younger researchers. So that is quite interesting to see. So we see that basically overall, cost is very inclusive and very gender friendly. I think if I talk on top of my mind, there's about 45% or around that number of female participants. And if you look at the leadership positions, the female part of our community is represented with more than 50%. I think it's around 52 even. So I don't see these kind of scores anywhere else in the framework program. So we are open, we are inclusive geographically, but also in terms of gender and age. So cost is really about inclusive excellence. Now, what is, let's say, inside those actions? What can we do? I already referred to training schools that can be organized on their topics, short-term scientific missions. But of course, you would like to meet in a network. So meetings are organized, workshops, conferences, and often they are combined in one trip. And there's dissemination, of course, to do about the wonderful results that you're working on. And since the pandemic, we have introduced virtual networking grants, 100% virtual mobility grants. My colleagues will go into detail about this. Around this core, you see a set of additional activities. We call them added value activities that we as Cost are organizing for all the actions. For example, we have a Cost Academy where we have trainings in all different kinds of aspects that help you to perform better. And I should stay on this slide. So think about areas like science communication, leadership training for young researchers, training for grant holders. How do you manage a grant? How do you interact with policymakers? How do I write a policy brief? How do I communicate? All these kind of trainings help you to perform at your best to get the most impact out of your endeavors. After 4 years of networking activities, we offer to those networks that have innovation potential an add-on grant called the Cost Innovators Grant to explore or further explore innovation potential with a deliverable to write a business plan. You also get training, by the way, for that. How do I write a business plan? How do I pitch my business plan to get funding or follow-up funding in another scheme, for example. Cost science-informed policy advice is really geared to put you in contact with different kinds of policymakers, whether it's at the European level or national level. The Cost Connect at the bottom is about getting groups of cost actions, so a cluster of cost actions together on a particular topic that is high on the EU policy-making agenda. For example, the digital transformation, or whether it's sustainable energy, or the Green Deal, or healthy oceans, you name it. And we not only invite the cost actions that are relevant, but at the same time we invite stakeholders that also would make a valuable contribution. For example, various parts of the Commission that have calls. So that's another benefit. Cost global networking is really our endeavor as Cost to expand the networks and to get more countries, let's say, on board. I think I'm slowly but surely coming to a closure, because your question, of course, is, what do I have to consider? What is the impact actually that we are aiming at? And just to give you, let's say, an illustration, because every network has its own, let's say, specific goals. But you can say, of course, that we have scientific discoveries and breakthroughs. We have the establishment of new research infrastructures, new laboratories, for example. New standards are coming out. We have plenty of examples, for example, in the field of mobile communications. Just to name one area. In terms of the careers, and that's based on a survey that we conduct annually, it appears that 85% of the researchers that participate in Cost has said, this has advanced my career. What all actions also have in common is that, of course, a cost action is an ideal breeding ground to meet other partners, to submit proposals to, let's say, Horizon 2020, or nowadays Horizon Europe. And we query this, and it appears that the proposals that are spinning off on an annual basis together amount for at least 450 million of approved projects with a success rate of close to 40%. Now, the average success rate in Horizon is 12-15%. So your success rate basically triples when participating in Cost. Let me also mention that participating in Cost not only allows you to identify partners for submitting proposals, but of course also to co-publish articles. And you meet, let's say, the people who are sharing a common interest with you. And it appears that on the basis of a robust academic study, your productivity when you participate in Cost in producing co-published papers increases with about 55% compared to not participating in Cost. And it lasts longer than Cost, because you know those people, and even if a Cost action after 4 years comes to an end, you still have built this network. So I think that's quite impressive. Now, just to bring it, let's say, to the point, so your success rate of more than 39% can lead to all different kinds of things. And here, overall, if you look at the level of the cost program, about 60 actions end every year, and they report almost 6 million spin-off funding per action on average, and that totals to 2.6 billion across Horizon. And we did that retrospectively, so here you still see Horizon 2020. So that's an enormous leverage effect, considering that the cost budget on an annual basis is 51 million euros. So you get 51 and you get 2.6 billion out. So I think that's a good bang for the taxpayer's buck. And with this, I think I've come to an end for my presentation, at least. I wish you an enjoyable and, of course, also informative session. And hereby, Salome, I'd like to hand back to you.
Thank you, Ronald. Thank you for the presentation and the introduction about cost. Now we are going to deep dive a little bit more in a cost and in cost action. I encounter a small technical issues, so I will just put unmute myself and stop the video sharing for a second. Okay. So I'm going to give you an insight of what a cost action is. Basically, the cost action provides the funding for the research capacity and doing the networking activities. The cost is not funding the research itself, but pull the resource and the research results by networking activities. Each cost action has the same setup. Basically, there is a memorandum of understanding where the work is described, the different objective and the aim of the action. The action is lasting for 4 years, and there is a minimum of 7 countries. The action can grow over the time because basically, and that's the very nice feature of the cost action, is that you can join at any point in time in the action. So really the network is evolving over the time. The aim is basically to enable the research coordination and the capacity building. Each action get about 600,000 euros over the 4 years, so about 150,000 euro per year. The setup of the action is always the same. There is the driving body, which is the management committee. So it's really the body who is going to drive the action over the 4 years to make sure that they achieve the objective, and they set up and they implement what has been described in the MOU, in the Memorandum of Understanding mentioned earlier. The management committee members are nominated by the cost national coordinators. The cost national coordinators are basically the interface between the country, the member country of cost, and the research community. Given the intergovernmental organization of cost, the cost national, the management committee members are nominated by the CNCs. So that's the body who's going to drive the action during the 4 years. But the work itself will be implemented by the different working group members. Here in the chart, we can see that there are about 6 working group members. Working group, group. It can be less, it can be more, it depends on the size of the action. There will be working group leaders who's going to drive each different working group. And there will be an action chair who's going to coordinate the action supported by the vice chair. There are different types of leadership position in the action because I've mentioned the action can be very, very large. It can be about 200, 300 participants. So therefore, different leadership roles will enable that the action runs smoothly. For example, there is the STSM coordinator, the scientific communication coordinator, ITC conference coordinator, who will help the action running smoothly. The funding will be received by the grant holder, and then the interface will be the grant holder scientific representative. The cost administration will support the action during this implementation. There are different benefits of in participating in a cost action. It can be the scientific benefit because basically you are participating to a very large network with different expertise in the topic of your interest. You can have access also to the infrastructure by, for example, doing a short-term scientific mission where you can go in another country in a host institute to do some and to perform some research work for a certain period of time. As the cost action is bottom-up projects, you can have emerging topics, and you can work then on new topics. You have then the networking capacity. You are participating to very large networks with about 100 or 200 participants who are at any kind of the research career. So they can be young researcher, experienced one. So you can have a great opportunity to network also within researchers within Europe, but also beyond. So it's really the free circulation of brain. You have also different career opportunities, as has been mentioned earlier by Ronald. COST offers great opportunities for trainings and learning skills, either during the different sessions like the COST Connect or the COST Academy, or also by also taking a leadership position, because then you build up some new skills for handling this leadership position, for which COST also provides you some training. And you have, last but not least, some financial support, but that will be mentioned later by Carmencita on the funding that you can get out of a cost action. Here on this graph, you see in a nutshell the different cost networking tools that we are providing. So on the left-hand side, you have the different possibility to attend workshop, conferences, and meetings. You have the training schools, which has been a bit mentioned earlier. So it's basically to go in a host institution for a certain period of time to do some research or experiments. So no, sorry, the training school is not that. That was the short-term scientific mission where you can go in a host institution for a certain period of time. That's a very popular tool, and you can really benefit from it. The training school is more to have a training on a specific interest, a specific topic interesting in the action, and to be trained and have highly skilled people training you. You have the participation to the different conference, can be either the ITC conference grant or the dissemination conference grant, where you can go and present your results to a conference. You have the possibility to get also funding for the dissemination, for website, flyers, video, so on and so forth. Last but not least, we have also the virtual networking grants, which has been introduced during the pandemic, which is basically a grant to do virtual collaboration. How to engage in a cost action? There are different ways to engage at a different level. You can participate in a running action. So as it has been mentioned, you can participate to an action at any point in time of the lifetime of the action. Obviously, the earlier you are participating to an action, the best you can take out of the action. In order to know if there is an action which can be of an interest for you, you can go on the cost website and browse the different action. I will show you later how you can do that. You then to know if really the action fits with your purpose, if it's really interesting for you, then you can read the MOU, the Memorandum of Understanding, which is basically describing the aim and the objective. And then you can see if you have really an interest and you want to engage more in the cost action. As mentioned, then you can see, or you can have all the information on the website. And once you have identified the different opportunities for you and identify how you want to participate to a cost action, then you can contact the participant of the action to join. So to identify the cost action, then you go on our website, you see it on this slide, you click on Browse Action. You have a display when you can put some keywords and search per keywords to identify all the action within this field of interest. Then you can decide at which level you want to participate. Either as a management committee member, meaning that basically you will be more engaged in the decision-making process of the action, you will be more engaged to coordinate the action, and to do so, you need to be appointed by the cost national coordinator of your country that you can contact, and you will find his or her details on the cost website. You can decide to be a working group participant, working really at the working group level because you want to contribute in such way. Then you can go and you find all the information on the cost websites, and you can apply to becoming a working group participant. You can also decide to work and to contribute more in action activities. You can find all the running activities on the website directly of the action, and to apply, for example, for a short-term scientific mission, an ITC conference grant, or a dissemination conference grant. In this slide, you will see a bit more detail what is the role of the management committee member, to see what it contains as a role. So as it has been mentioned, is more about the coordination of the action, the implementation of the different objectives. The management committee member also have a good view on what is ongoing in the action, and as it's representing really its country, it's not representing institution, then it can also liaise with its national community about what is ongoing in the action. If you want to join more as a working group member, you need to have an affiliation to a legal entity, and then you can apply towards the action to be accepted as a working group member. To become such a working group member, as I mentioned, you have just to go on the webpage, on the COST website of the action, and simply apply. It's a straightforward process. It's very easy. If you want to participate in the action activities, for example, to a short-term scientific mission, an ITC conference grant, or a dissemination grant, then you can directly apply via eCost. That's the end of my presentation. So then I will give the floor to my colleague, Angelo, who's going to give you more an insight on how to submit an application. Angelo, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Salome, and good morning, everyone. Indeed, besides participating in one ongoing action, another way to work and to engage with cost is to be proposer of a new cost action. This means even further success for your careers. And I will guide you in how to prepare an application. So first, it's the eligibility criteria for a proposal. And there are 5 main eligibility criteria. So a proposal must represent a network of at least 7 different cost, full, or cooperating members. It's also noteworthy that half of the participants of the network of proposers shall be from inclusiveness target countries. So if there are, for instance, 10 countries in the network of proposers, at least 5 shall be inclusiveness target countries. It is also mandatory that proposals are original, so there are controls about plagiarism, and even more on peaceful purposes. So only activities aiming at peaceful purposes are eligible for proposals. Technically, it is also important that you use a technical annex template. I will send links. You will see links and how to assess that template. There are word and page limits that I will discuss further. All proposals must be written in English and also be anonymous. We have that in this blind process, evaluators are not aware of who is behind the network of, who is composing the network of proposers. I will also cover this more in detail. Now, what is a proposal? A proposal is comprising 4 sections, and there are general features. There is a technical annex, that is the document at the core of the proposal. There are cost excellence. There is a section dedicated to cost excellence and inclusiveness policy objectives, and the network of proposers. When it comes to the general features, this is just really a short section where there is an acronym for an action, a short summary of up to 1,500 characters. there are keywords that you select to highlight, as in the graph that Ronald covered in his presentation, in which several areas and disciplines your proposal falls into. And also you there highlight which areas of expertise are needed for evaluation. This is your way to suggest us how to select the best, us as science officer, the best reviewers for your proposal. The second part is the technical annex. The technical annex is one document that articulates in 4 sections. These 4 sections are about the science and technology excellence, the networking excellence, the impact of your proposal, and the implementation. There are further subsections, and these do relate directly to the evaluation criteria that I will explain later. But in general, it is one document of a maximum of 15 pages, which must be based on the template that is available on our website. It can contain diagrams and figures. In particular, a Gantt chart in section 4 in implementation is mandatory. And also here, I would like to remind that references are not to be included in the technical annex because there is a dedicated section in the eCost website for submission. So 15 pages without including references as bibliography. Now, next part is about the, sorry, jump backwards. About the cost excellence and inclusiveness policy-specific objectives. Balance is something that is very, very important for cost activities and actions. And we are talking about 3 types of balance: geographical balance, meaning the inclusiveness, so spreading excellence across all the 41 member countries; age balance, so as we have learned about young researchers, with this definition of young, below 40 years of age. So we promote the participation of young researchers and innovators and their career development; and gender balance, so that through all the activities we have an equal participation regardless of geography, age, and gender. In this section, your proposal should highlight the specific objectives. And so how does your proposal helps to identify and spread excellence? These are also our priorities. How does your proposal enable access to funding and infrastructures to several research communities? And how does it changes this? How does it trigger structural changes in the national research systems? Now, the 4th section is the network of proposers. In the network of proposers, I'm sorry, my slides are jumping forward and backwards. The network of proposers is the people behind that idea and that proposal. This network of proposers joins at the stage of submission, which happens through eCost. So eCost is our portal, our dedicated portal, not only for managing and participating in actions, but also for submitting proposals. Now, as we have seen, it starts with one idea and a main proposer and several secondary proposers. How is that process? It's such that the main proposer creates on eCost the main proposal. Then she fills all these sections that I showed you, including uploading the technical annex. She is also responsible for inviting secondary proposers. So only the main proposer can invite secondary proposers, whose role is, first of all, at the stage of submission, to accept the invitations. I'm sorry, I'm having technical issues because I presume that the share control is moving through the slides. So for that, I ask my colleagues kindly to refrain from any use of the slides. I'm sorry for that. So this means that, okay. So besides accepting the invitation for the secondary proposers, there is, of course, some help needed in filling the sections. So the main proposer uploads the technical annex, but is also collaborating with the secondary proposer in preparing the content for those sections, and notably the technical annex. Finally, it is the main proposer who submits the proposal. Now, after submission, the proposal goes into evaluation and selection, and we have a process of evaluation and selection that articulates in 3 steps. First, there is an evaluation performed by 3 independent external experts that is based on the technical annex. These 3 experts then join in a consensus phase, and that consensus report prepared by one of the 3 experts is evaluated, is approved or not approved by the individual experts, and a review panel member joins in for quality check along with the work of us scientific officers to ensure a fair evaluation. We prepare a ranking based on the evaluation reports, and based on that ranking, then our scientific committee proceeds through the selection that is based on the policy objectives section, that section 3 that I showed you before. The evaluation criteria are with 10 different questions, each worth 5 points. There are 3 sections which count for 15 points, and the last section, implementation, counts for 5 points. There is a threshold of 34 points, but that threshold is generally very, very much below the limit for funding that we have, as we had a question in Q&A about the success rate. The success rate is generally, in last call, was 17%. You can consider something in that range, typically, and 34 points is very much below what is a successful and excellent proposal. Now, there was also a question, for instance, about how to highlight the novelty of an application with respect to past cost actions. There is one section in the evaluation criteria, and that is question 4, with the added value of networking in science and technology excellence with regards to efforts at European and international level. So that is the question, and that is the section of the technical annex where you can explain how a new proposal adds to the past efforts, including costs, but not only. Of course, we operate within the Horizon Europe framework. After evaluation and selection, of course, there is the first step, and that is the approval by our committee of senior officials. And you can expect about 7 to 8 months after the submission of your proposal till you hear, hopefully, good news that your proposal has been successful. When is the next collection date? The next collection date is the 23rd of October at noon, Central European time. And I would now give you some last recommendation with regards to the questions that we most frequently receive. So one question that we receive is about the budget. As we know, that is a tedious part of preparing a proposal. The good news is that to prepare a cost action proposal, you do not have to work on a budget. So you do not need to involve, as you may typically do, your research offices in budgeting the proposal. There is no need for having those documents signed off. Also, if you miss, and I hope you will not miss this collection date of the 23rd of October, you can expect the new collection date to be 1 year later in autumn 2025. It is also important that the proposers are individuals and not their entities of affiliation. These have several implications, and for the good, I think, which is that, for instance, if you are a PhD student or a postdoc and you are planning, your plans do not span beyond the next year, This should not stop you from submitting a proposal, because it's you as individual who are proposers, and as we know, entities of affiliation change. It is not a problem if you submit a proposal with an affiliation X, and at the time of successful evaluation of your proposal, you are in affiliation Y or Z. Once again, it is very important that you use this template. That template available on our website is changing with every open call. So in particular, if you are submitting a proposal for the second time, maybe you submitted and you were not successful, please do adapt the template to the current open call. There may be changes, for instance, in sections, and proposals which do not use the current template are ineligible, and it is already sad to see that much work is missed for not following the template. Also, we often see anonymity breaches. It is, of course, a tricky subject because you want to highlight how you are competent and how you are the best network to push this challenge and to solve this challenge through action activities. You have in the guidelines for applicants example of what is and what is not an anonymity breach. And also another technical detail is that through eCosts, you can in fact submit a proposal, and if our collection date is the 23rd of October, I highly recommend you to submit your proposal, say on the 19th of October or a few days in advance. It will be very easy to update the sections that need update, for instance, to update a new technical annex. And in the moment you submit and you make a new submission of an existing proposal, you can and should double check the document produced, because chances are, as we see it happening, that someone attached the wrong document, for instance, causing again a sad loss of work and effort. As I mentioned, documents and guidelines. So how to apply, there is a dedicated section on our website. In the documents and guidelines sections, you can find in particular 3 documents: the open call announcement, the technical annex template to be used, and the open call guideline, the applicant guidelines. In this section on cost-EU funding documents guidelines. And finally, you may find other resources on the COST website, and we have a dedicated mailbox for questions for which you do not find answers in the documents, also with reference to the annotated rules for cost actions. If you do not find answers there, we are happy to support you by email. And finally, briefly, another way to participate and to engage with cost, and that helps us, is to be an expert in evaluating submitting proposals. Of course, that is the case if you are not submitter of a proposal, in which case you would have a conflict of interest for which we would not invite you. But in the moment that you create a profile on eCosts, you can select to be possibly a cost expert. And for that, if you are not proposers, we invite you to participate in the evaluation of open call proposals. Even if you are proposers instead, you are welcome to help us and participate in the assessment of action results and outcomes. That is the monitoring part that we have. So after 2 years and after 4 years of activities, we science officers look for experts in a specific field, and we look for experts who have not participated in that action. So if you see existing actions in which are ongoing in which you do not participate, you can, by creating an eCosts profile, have the chance of participate as a rapporteur reviewer of for an action. I just saw a very last question related to the submission of proposal, and that is when are results of the evaluation announced. And as I said, the results are 7-8 months after the submission deadline. So feedback will be in May. And thank you all. And with this, I would give the floor to my colleagues, Ms. Malimban. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Carmencita. The floor is yours.
Hello and good morning, everybody. My name is Carmencita Malimban. I am an administrative officer here at the Cost Association. So my presentation is about what are the networking activities that are funded within cost actions. So my suggestion for everyone actually is before you type in that question is to actually listen to my presentation and maybe you will find the answer there. So may I ask if I can, I will request now control of the slides. Can you give me control of the slides? Thank you very much. Right. So it's taking time for me to change the slide. So, okay. I need to check. Okay, so what can be funded? So we have what we call networking activities. You have heard my colleagues say meetings and training schools. So these are what we call events that are organized by the cost action. There is also such a thing as mobility of researchers and innovators. These are short-term scientific missions or virtual mobility. We can also fund presentations at external conferences when you present the results of the work of your cost action, whether it's through ITC conference grants or dissemination conference grants. So these are the activities that involve scientists and researchers and cost members within the action. Another way to be funded inside the cost action is through other expenses specifically supporting the action. So on top of the networking, there is also dissemination and communication products because we give focus actually on how you are going to disseminate the results of your action. It's all about impact. So samples of dissemination and communication products is the action website. We expect each action to set up their own action website. We also fund, as example, scientific publications and open access, leaflets, brochures, etc. Aside from that, so expenses incurred for the benefit of the network, what we call ORSA, other expenses related to scientific administration, or for example, bank charges. When a grant holder needs to pay participants for their travel expenses, then a grant holder can ask to be reimbursed the bank charges. And there is also a virtual networking support grant available. And I will explain this further on. So on top of all of that, there's also called a local organizer support. This is a financial contribution to organize meetings and training schools. So if somebody wants to host your event as a meeting, so the institution hosting it can apply for a financial support. So in terms of events, how is the travel reimbursement? So for meetings and training schools, travel reimbursement of the expenses incurred for attending cost events. So if you attend a meeting for a cost action network, you are reimbursed for your long distance travel and what we call a daily allowance in order to cover your accommodation, your meals, as well as any short distance travel. In training schools, there are two kinds of reimbursements. We reimburse the trainers and the trainees. Short-term scientific missions. These are paid as a grant. Where can an individual go to an STSM? It has to be a different country other than the participant's affiliation. For example, I'm a researcher in Poland and I want to go to a short-term scientific mission. It means I have to go outside of Poland to do my short-term scientific mission. It can be anywhere in the world. And the grant amount can be up to 4,000 euros. It's dependent, of course, of where the short-term scientific mission is taking place and the duration of the STSM. Who decides the amount of the grant? It is the management committee. What we want to stress here is that the people who are listening to our wonderful webinar today, you cannot go to cost directly and apply for a cost grant. You have to be part of an action network in order to apply for these types of grants. ITC conference grants. ITC conference grants are grants that are available to young researchers aged below 40 who are coming from ITC countries, inclusiveness target countries. So where any high-level conference not organized by the action to present the results of the action, and up to 2,000 euros as a grant, no receipts required, which is paid after a report approval. So what if you are above 40 and you are not coming from an ITC? There is such a thing called a dissemination conference grants. For this grant, an oral presentation is required, whereas in an ITC conference grant, we ask minimum poster presentation. Again, it should be in a conference, in a not organized by the action, but it can be anywhere in the world. And the grant fund is up to 2,000 euros maximum, paid after the report approval. So what are virtual mobility grants? Virtual mobility grants are grants that are given to a specific individual in order to do online collaboration without needing to travel. A sample is preparing a survey for the network. So up to 1,500 euros paid after report approval. So it seems that I am, so for the next, okay, info day, this is, okay. So before I give the floor to Karen, let me just add some more information because it seems that the slide is a bit lacking. But so for dissemination and communication products, so there are the action website. There's also the action logo. They can also apply to fund these things. Leaflets, brochures, what we call dissemination materials. Also funding for open access journals, and also booths at conferences not organized by the action to increase the visibility of the network. And also information materials. For example, there is an international conference and you want your action to be visible. There's such a thing also that you want to produce some pens, some USB sticks, and that sort of thing. And of course, multimedia content if you want to produce videos for your action. So thank you very much. And I give now the floor to Karen. For any questions, please just put them in the Q&A. Thank you.
Thank you, Carmencita. I'd just like to thank the Cost Association for inviting me today to speak regarding the cost action that I am sharing. So what I will do is give you an example of clearly a live action, and you can get a very good idea of what Roland has spoken about, what Angelo has presented today, and what Salome and Carmencita has talked about as well. So you'll see practical examples of an action in place. So I'm based in the University of Limerick in Ireland, and our action is called Determinants of Physical Activity in Settings, and it is called DPAS, is the acronym for that. So later on, I'll talk in more detail about what the focus of the action is, but at a fundamental level, we are interested in why people are active, physically active, or why they are not physically active. So what factors influence that particular decision or that choice that they make. Throughout the presentation, I'm going to illustrate the benefits of the action by talking about the nature of the challenge that we were able to engage in, talk about the types of objectives that we have set and that we are well on the way to achieving. Also talk about the breadth of the work groups, their focus, but the breadth of deliverables that we have implemented. We'll talk about the action network and tools. We have alluded to those already. So for example, the training schools, the meetings, etc. But really emphasize the value of the range of tools that cost make available, their flexibility and the impact that can be gained from them. We'll talk about, coming towards the end of the action as such, we'll talk about the actions, the outputs that are possible, the outputs that we have identified, and some key achievements, specifically some key spin-offs from the action. I will highlight insights, opportunities, challenges, but also talk about the next phase of the network. So some background to the action is important. So at the proposal stage in September 2019, when we submitted the proposal, and it's important to note that that proposal evolves into what's called the Memo of Understanding, which guides the work that you do and the engagement of participants in your action over the 4-year duration. But we began with 35 countries involved and 104 proposers. But then the action grew, and now there is approximately 40 countries involved, but about 300 participants involved. So the actions take on a very much a life of their own, and they become very, very dynamic and grow, and the amount of integration and involvement in it is enormous, to say the least. So we succeeded at the second attempt for our proposal, and the feedback we gained at our first submission was hugely valuable in driving the second attempt, the second proposal, and clearly we were successful there. Various aspects of multidisciplinarity, interdisciplinarity, gender balance, involvement of ITC countries, engagement or a presence of policymakers in the proposal, and also a connection with existing networks. These were all seen as very, very important factors in a successful proposal. So we are now entering the final year of our network, of our action, and we will conclude in October 2024. The average budget is approximately 160,000 per year, and an enormous amount can be achieved with that type of budget, and we have found that. What is important to note in the context of our action, and this may be pertinent to other actions as well, or those actions that you're considering yourselves, is that we based our action on the state of the art regarding the research evidence in 2017. We were involved in, and I was involved in, what is called a joint program initiative called DediPack, which had a focus on the determinants of physical activity and diet. So that was our basis, that was our foundation, and then DPAS sprung from that. But we used that as our foundation to say, this is the need, this is the gap, this is where we are now, and this is what we plan to do next through our cost action. So we were building our momentum, and we had a unique, particularly unique focus. So why cost? A network was needed. Based on what we found in DediPack, a network was needed to establish research harmonization, to bring people together in a coordinated fashion so that we would think collectively regarding our research objectives, but that we would collect data collectively. So this was one of the key issues we identified in DediPack, that data was fragmented in the way it was being collected. There was no consistency across nations, etc. We were also looking for something which was sustainable long-term into the future. So establishing a network now and establishing a strong foundation over a 4-year period would give us sustainability further on into the future. So the idea always was the network would not stop at the end of the cost funding, but would continue in a refashioned, a reinvented fashion. So our challenge was we were going to develop a network of multidisciplinary stakeholders, the scientists and policymakers. That was important, bridging that gap that would identify, effectively measure, further understand, setting specifics. So we were looking at schools, community, etc., factors that would influence or increase, maintain levels of physical activity behavior. So this is what we were interested in, understanding that particular behavior. There's a video there, maybe you might have a chance at some stage to, that was one of our outputs, to develop a concise short video to illustrate the challenge, to illustrate the nature of our network. From that challenge stemmed these research coordination and capacity building objectives. So these were stated in the proposal. We identified these in the proposal. So it's part of the proposal. So you have two aspects here, and the first four would illustrate capacity building objectives. But again, look at the nature of these. This is the benefit of the network. We were able to articulate such objectives, and we have progressed those significantly in the lifetime of our action. So we were looking at bridging the knowledge and translation gap. So the connection between science and implementation. We were looking at facilitating that bridging. We were planning to develop a multidisciplinary international network, which was important. So a pan-European network of young researchers and innovators, but also linking them with policymakers. We were looking to consolidate, further utilize, bring together existing expertise, existing evidence, existing knowledge, existing resources. So to bring those together in a research harmonization perspective, or a research harmonization network. So basically optimizing existing knowledge, evidence, expertise, resources collectively within a network. Other research objectives then, and I'll just lead on to the last one, the last two there, would be aiming to harmonize data collection, to collect data in a similar fashion across a number of European nations, and I'll touch on that again later on. And finally, to articulate towards the end of the action a evidence-based, aspirational research harmonization agenda, or research harmonization strategy for the future, so that the action would just not stop after 4 years, but the next phase would be articulated and planned, and a roadmap to implement the next phase would be put in place. Our structure is a typical structure: management committee, core group, but we also have what is called the implementation group, which involves the core group who drive the action as such, the work group, and the deliverable leaders. So that's a larger group of active individuals who are driving the action at the work group level, but also at the deliverable level. So that group meets within the action. We had 4 work groups: management, work group 1, looking at existing evidence and the translation of that, developing a measurement toolkit was work group 3, and then the European harmonization of data collection was work group 4. Clearly, I will not go through all of the deliverables, but I would like to highlight to you, you'll be able to look at these in your own time, but I would like to highlight to you the range of deliverables we have identified. And some of those deliverables are training schools, and they were very important in the context of the action. Some of them are identified as outputs in the context of manuscripts. Some of them we've labeled them best evidence. Manuscripts are best evidence outputs, looking at this current state of the art and trying to drive that forward. Others then are looking at research harmonization, and others are looking at defining the legacy phase of the action. So looking at the various networking tools and their implementation, how do we utilize them, and how have we utilized them to date? So the networking tool meetings was exceedingly important. Yes, it was challenging at the beginning in the context of COVID, but we managed quite effectively, and we eventually moved back to face-to-face meetings. So we had a number of management committee meetings. 2 of those have been online to date. One of them was a face-to-face meeting. So this is the meeting of the management, the full management committee. But in parallel to those kind of meetings, we also had implementation group meetings, so that we engaged both the management committee with the implementation group, with the core group at these various meetings. We had separate implementation group meetings as well. We held one in Malta, and we had we are planning a final event in October 2024 in Prague. But within that final event, we'll also integrate some very, very key training schools over a period of approximately 3 days. We have had a number of online core group meetings and a number of face-to-face core group implementation group meetings. So we've held to date about 3 training schools. One of those was online initially, and another 2 were face-to-face. And these were significant events. These were important events for progressing our objectives, for progressing our deliverables, and they were well attended. The online one was attended in excess of 150 people. The face-to-face approximately 40 each. But we found those very effective tool for training regarding the implementation of our deliverables, but also for agreeing what are we going to do next. So they were very useful meetings from that perspective. 2 other aspects that we have used extensively to date are the short-term scientific missions and the virtual mobility grants. These, I have to say, are central to progressing the deliverables, to achieving the detailed implementation of those deliverables. So we have used those tools very effectively, where people have traveled to other nations to implement the STSM, or people have worked in a collaborative fashion virtually to progress various deliverables. The ITC conference grants and the dissemination grants have also been used extensively. Not so much the dissemination grant, but we're anticipating in the final year that we will use that now more extensively. Outputs are what we say are end loaded. They're going to be at the end of the action. So to date, we have 1 full publication, many abstracts, but we have 6 full publication submissions made, and there are 6 additional publication outputs planned and 2 key reports. So we anticipate these are all progressing significantly at the moment, and we anticipate that will be represent our outputs towards the end of the action. Another key achievement is that we have secured Marie Curie doctoral network funding of 2.7 million, and this is a direct spin-off from the action focusing on determinants of physical activity, but doing this through a doctoral network of 10 doctoral students. So we were very happy with that success. Again, that was on second application, second proposal was successful. So the message there distinctly from me is, once you try once and you don't succeed, do try again, and the chances are you will succeed. Other outputs then would be the website, the promotional videos. So these are very, very important. I've highlighted the abstracts, etc. Some key achievements that we have put in place would be the various capacity building and training aspects. About 40% of our members are early career investigators or postgraduates. So that's very, very important. And they are really driving the action there. And we are overtly are working specifically to engage them deeper and deeper into the action, because it is about capacity building, and it is about expanding and making the European research area to extend that European research area wider than it currently is. So we are making a significant effort here. I've mentioned the Marie Curie, but we are also producing best evidence statements. So these are key achievements, trying to tap into the state of the art currently and approaching our best evidence statement with a with exactly that in mind, looking for the best evidence and putting that information across in the context of systematic literature reviews, meta-analysis, but also integrating it into the development of various measurement tools, which we will then use to collect harmonized data across, currently we're collecting harmonized data across 10 European nations. We have a proof of concept of data collection harmonization, and we're quite proud of that. It is difficult, and it was difficult, and it will be difficult to continue it, but we are collecting data across 10 European nations in a harmonized, exactly the same fashion. And we are now moving into the phase of completing data collection, but then confronting the challenges of data sharing, how we can share data across national borders, and how we can collectively analyze that data. So it's an ongoing process, and we will report on that. And we have identified potentially the next phase of our action. I'll touch on that later as well. So some insights, a significant effort, there was no doubt about it, to develop a strong proposal. It had to be excellent. It had to score very, very high. It is very competitive. But that effort, I have to say, at the time, I might have said, oh my gosh, this is taken over my life. However, it is and it has been worthwhile. There's no question about that. And I will conclude with that statement later on. So the cost action, without question, it's an outstanding networking tool. It works excellently in that fashion to bring people together at all levels of experience, at all ages, across many, many nations, across many disciplines. It allows that to happen very, very effectively. So again, it's an outstanding capacity tool. Once you emphasize, we want to get younger researchers involved, we want them to be active, that can happen. The virtual mobility, the short-term scientific mission, these are superb tools and very innovative in how they're implemented. The training schools are excellent. The support from cost administration, and I'm not saying this because my scientific officer Angelo is present. I'm not complimenting him, but the support from the cost is excellent. But also the e-cost platform, it's a very effective tool once you get to know it. There's flexibility within and across budget items. That's important. We've been able to do that. To note, DPAS is a large action. With many countries, many participants. And from an early stage, you need to contemplate that your action is going to become quite large. And you need to kind of plan carefully. How are you going to integrate people meaningfully at the level of the deliverable? So plan that carefully. We've been able to do that. The focus is on the network capacity. However, you can do research, and we have done very, very good research in this context. So both capacity building can happen and network development can happen, but also research can happen. And a final statement virtually is, yes, what I recommended to a friend, I would certainly recommend it a cost action to a friend, and I would recommend it to the audience here. So coming towards the end of my presentation, we have identified the legacy phase of the cost action. Part of that is the Marie Curie. So we've started our legacy phase already. We are going to rebrand DPAS as a research harmonization network. Part of that will be the Marie Curie, will be in that, but we will continue our data collection. So we have plans for the future. We look at a 2025-2030 implementation plan, and members will be involved in that, and that detail is on that slide. And thank you very much for listening to me. So I'll hand it back to Salome there, the control of the presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Karen, for this wonderful presentation and all the insights and the experiences you have shared about cost. We are almost ending our session. So we are arriving at the Q&A session, but the live one, because during the presentation, with the great support of my colleagues, we have already answered to more than 175 questions, which is quite impressive. We are almost, we are already running a bit out of time, so I will just maybe take one or two questions. Maybe one question for Kiaran, if you are happy to enter that. I will read the question. Kiaran, you don't say too much about stakeholders other than policymakers. Could you comment on that?
In the development of the proposal, we were very careful to have a broad range of stakeholders, both from a scientific perspective. So scientists, that was important for many nations, but also existing networks were seen as a stakeholding group, and also policymakers were seen as a stakeholder group. So we identified that, and in the proposal, we identified collectively about 7 key stakeholders. And young individuals, young researchers were one of those stakeholders as well. So it was definitely a very important part of our proposal, is the identification of various stakeholders that would be involved in the proposal. Yes.
Okay, thank you very much. Yeah, there is another question. Whether is there an age limit for the proposal that will submit the proposal? Age balance, young researcher under 40 must be ensured amongst all the participants. The question has...
I can, sorry, from my perspective, from our proposal, I know from the first submission to our feedback to the second submission, that balance across all of those categories was very important. So the balance across gender, the balance, the inclusion of ITC countries, the balance across the inclusion of young researchers and innovators. These were all very important factors in securing the necessary excellence score. So also the multidisciplinary perspective was a key factor. One of the criticisms of the initial proposal is that we were too focused, too dominant within the health sciences, and that other disciplines should have been present. So those key factors, they are highlighted in the cost excellence and inclusion policy. You must take those into account when you're preparing your proposal. So read carefully the expectations and the goals of cost, and they should be evident in your proposal. I hope that answers that question.
Thank you very much for this very good explanation, and to put it in perspective with the proposal. We will end the Q&A session. A few words before closing this event. So before wrapping up, just to let you know that we have a great newsletter that you can register for on the website, so you can get lots of information about cost and what it's ongoing. And we are also very active on the social media, so if you want to have an insight of the latest news, or also we a lot communicate about the cost actions, the different actions, what it's ongoing. You can get lots of information by joining us on the social media. I would like, before closing, thank all the audience who have take time to participate to this Cost Info Day. We hope that you get the necessary answer to your question, that you have a better overview of what cost offers, and that you are then willing to join us in a running action or as an expert, or to submit a new action proposal with of your network. Thank you very much to the audience, and thank you very much to all the speakers and the colleagues who made that effort and made that Cost Info Day happening. The session will be closed, and I say you goodbye.